All right, well, welcome back, everyone. By now, many of you are aware that I've recently been able to publish my second Kriya Yoga book entitled Kriya Yoga Vichara, integrating the techniques and philosophy of Ramana Maharshi and Paramahansa Yogananda. So I want to just take a moment to speak to why I wrote that book. I started it a few years ago because it occurred to me that there was a real need for people to see that the non-duality of Ramana Maharshi really needs to be matched up with a system that gives a foundation for the capacity to contemplate what you are, to practice vichara or self-inquiry. And for me, Kriya Yoga has always been that. I've been interested in Kriya Yoga as well as Vichara, Yogananda, and Ramana Maharshi since I began the whole process. And as I was writing Kriya Yoga, Continuing the Lineage of Enlightenment, the first book, going over the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, it occurred to me, well, the Yoga Sutras and the Kriya Yoga system is perfectly in line with Vichara and self-inquiry. Because the very first sutras within that text speak to that when we practice yoga, that the fluctuations, the changes within our field of consciousness end. And then what happens? Well, we get to the self-inquiry aspect within the first three sutras. Then the seer abides in the seer's own true nature. And from that point forward, the Yoga Sutras elaborate on that whole point and how to do that, how to abide in your own nature. And if you're familiar with Ramana Maharshi, you'll know that his whole process was figuring out who you are, what you are, and learning to abide as the self. So these two things were never separate for me. They always made perfect sense. So I'd practice my Kriya Yoga, meditation routines that I learned, and then I would practice self-inquiry. And even my Kriya Yoga teacher, when I'd go on retreats and listen, he would include these things too. We'd practice the techniques. And then there would be advice to contemplate yourself, your sense of self. He wouldn't say, who am I? He would say, what am I? Which leads you to the same spot. But anyway, the whole idea of Kriya Yoga Vichara, I think it's, I have personally experienced to be a very profound combination of the processes. Now, if you do decide to read this book, you do need to be aware that this is not a book for people who enjoy deifying a guru. This is not a book to support fantasies about the whole process. And as I joke in the foreword that I thought maybe I should entitle this book the most unpopular book on Kriya Yoga and Vichara, essentially for the fact that it's not telling you to idolize a guru. It's saying this is the hard work you need to do, so do it. And a lot of people don't really like to hear that. So you may find a lot of bad reviews about this book, and I'm prepared for that. I wrote this book because it needed to be written. Many times I quit. I decide, I don't really want to write this. I don't think that people are going to understand it, so let's just put it aside. I'll focus on my own spiritual practice. They can focus on their spiritual practice. They'll find what's real for them, and we'll be done with it. But every time I was about to shelf it, someone would write to me and say, how's that book coming? And, you really have to write that book. And I said, why do I have to write this book? No one's going to listen. And so they still may not. But anyway, finally, it was when I watched the Awake movie that I was inspired to finish this book. So many people say that Awake movie was inspiring. It was inspiring to me as well, but not in the same way. It inspired me because I wanted you to see what is required to wake up. And it will be a combination of your Kriya Yoga practices as well as Vichara training and taking it seriously. It's not going to be deifying a guru, or it's not going to be getting lost in an organization or seeking out good feelings or these sorts of things. It's going to be hard work. So that's why I wrote the book. And here's the cover. It has Arunachala, the mountain in the back, over the whole thing. So personally, this book needed to be written. That's my sense. Most people probably won't like it. At least I don't expect it to be the case. But there may be a few of you that understand that the whole process is time intensive. You got to take it seriously, and chasing good feelings is not going to do it for you. So those of you that do find it to be helpful and do resonate with it, by all means get the book. And those of you who have an affinity for Ramana Maharshi's self-inquiry, as well as Yogananda's practices that he brought to the West, the techniques that are in there are the techniques that I was taught during initiation. The initial techniques, which we do go over on this channel, so you don't have to buy the book to get those. You can just search Kriya Yoga Pranayama techniques on this YouTube channel, Kriya Yoga Online. But there are some advanced techniques that I learned from my teacher, the second, third, and fourth Kriyas. Again, those are there for those of you who have learned them from someone. You can try them yourself, but I put them in there for the sake of completion, and so that when I work with an individual and they want to remember the whole process, I can just give them the book, and then they'll say, okay, this is what Ryan was talking about. There are other Kriya Yoga teachers out there that also teach these, so they're there for the sake of completion, to give you a sense of what they're like. But in the book I do stress that you need to learn the basic techniques first. If you can experience superconsciousness and clarity through the initial Kriya Yoga procedures and lifestyle that's recommended, there's really no point in trying to attempt the higher Kriya Yoga procedures, because the initial ones are really enough. But anyway, back to the point. So Kriya Yoga Vichara, the book is complete. The chapters include work and knowledge, where I discuss how we need to know what we are to be what we are. Sure, that's the knowledge aspect. But we also need to know how to do the work to experience that, which is the Kriya Yoga techniques and lifestyle. There's a chapter on advanced spirituality, where, based on my experience over these few years that I've been practicing, I essentially describe what is required to practice advanced spirituality. And it's nothing new age, it's nothing fantastic, it's a very down-to-earth and practical approach. I have a chapter on guru and initiation, which speaks about my thoughts on gurus, my thoughts on learning from mentors and knowledgeable people. What is Kriya Yoga, the process, and how does it work in initiation? There's a chapter on Kriya Yoga meditation techniques, which go over the techniques that are on this channel, as well as the second, third, and fourth tier Kriya Yoga practices. Kriya Yoga meditation routines, so beginner, intermediate, and advanced routines, so you know how to set up a practice. But again, that's also covered in the 11-hour training course at ashevedicastrology.com under Learn Kriya Yoga, that tab. After that, we start moving into the self-inquiry, the 4 gatekeepers of liberation, which are specific to Vasista's yoga. Chapter 8 deals with contemplative practices, how to contemplate to have your spiritual questions answered. Then objects of contemplation, whether it's a deity, a book, an idea, a thought. How to really engage spiritual contemplation. The second to last chapter deals with yogic sleep, learning how to stay conscious and learn to meditate while your body sleeps, which is really enjoyable once you get the hang of it. But that is something we go over briefly again in that 11-hour training course at ashevedicastrology.com. And then the final chapter is just essentially rehashing many of the things I said, dealing with the inner alchemy of Kriya Yoga and how it works. So the whole book itself focuses on the practices that you need to know how to do. It focuses on the philosophy that will lead to higher realizations. But it does assume that you have already taken care of the basics of your life, such as being healthy, being psychologically calm and clear, taking care of your needs, financial resources and otherwise. It assumes that you are already at a point where now you have the time and energy to dedicate towards an intensive practice of Kriya Yoga, of Vichara, Kriya Yoga, and self-inquiry. So, if after all that you're interested in the book, wonderful. As I mentioned, this was an inspired work and it needed to be written. Personally, I don't think it's going to be that popular. In fact, I assume that I'll probably get quite a few negative reviews on Amazon, but that's just par for the course. But that's the second book on Kriya Yoga, and it might be probably one of the last ones that I write. Anything else just comes from living your life and learning how to integrate your spiritual practices into your daily living. So we'll see how it goes. Who knows? All right, so thank you for tuning in. It was a pleasure to speak with you again, and enjoy the book Kriya Yoga Vichara if you're inclined. Peace.